Islam, Hotep, peace, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Moorish News Media 7. I am Sheikhis Moal Diana Love L, and we're bringing to you today more Blood on the Doorpost 5, returning to journalistic integrity. Thank you for joining us today. Here I have in the studio today is Grand Sheikh El Love Il of the Moorish Science Temple of America as a body politic. Islam, Grand Sheikh, and how are you today?
Islam, Sheikhs. I'm great. All praise due to Allah. Great to be here. Honors to the Prophet, Noble Ali, all true and divine prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Confucius, Yeshua, Islam.
Thank you so much for joining us today here on Moorish News 7. We have so much to cover, but I want to give a shout out and send blessings to Moors all over. Happy Holy Day to Moorish all over the world, Moorish American Muslims. And also we have our Independence Day that's coming up / Prophet Memorial Day. And I'd like to send out a grand salute to all the Moors here in North America and the present Moroccan Empire concerning that Moorish Memorial Independence Day. Let's talk about our Moorish Independence Day that's coming up on this month, July 20th, Grand Sheikh. Independence, because of the Moors, that meeting that was held on July 20th, the Prophet held, and
Islam.
of course a year after losing our dearly beloved Prophet on the 20th of July.
Making his transition. Islam.
Making his transition. Can we go into that briefly, Grand
Islam.
Sheikh?
Praise Allah. Yes, the Moorish Memorial, first of all, the Moorish Independence Day is the equivalent of the 4th of July. So the 20th of July is our Independence Day. This is the day that the meeting was held in accordance to the Religious Corporation Act, which set us aside as a religious corporate society. So also on the exact calendar day, a year from that date, was the date that the Prophet Noble Ali made his transition. So it is it's a dual holiday date for the Moorish American Muslims in recognition of the move that the Prophet made to create autonomy for us. So I wanted to kind of go into some documentation to show and to separate, because the word is always that there is confusion amongst the Moorish society, but actually there is no confusion. We have documentation on the letterhead from the Recorder of Deeds / the Register of Torrens titles before that office was absorbed. So we wanted to also take this opportunity to update the nation as far as the status and the current position of the Moorish Science Temple of America as a body politic. Islam?
Thank you very much for that. Before you go into that, I just wanted to share the inverted flag that we have here, and many people are probably looking, and you notice that the flag is inverted, the Moorish flag,
Right.
which is a sign of distress. You have a whole nation of people here. So, Grand Sheikh, go into the facts, which
Right.
show and prove who is who. Let's
Islam.
talk about the Moorish Science
All
Temple
right,
of America as a body politic.
before we get into this letter, let's touch bases on the flag.
Well, the inverted
fact that
flag
when
is a signal of distress, a call out to the international community.
Well,
It is what it is.
Well, let me go ahead and bring it to proper perspective. When we saw the Prophet pose with the flag, I believe this is a picture where he's pictured with his secretary, and the flag is posted behind him. The flag is posted in much the same way, with the inverted flag, the inverted star, which means that that's a symbol of distress. This goes back to the flag vexillology when it comes to ships being out in the open sea and ships that represent different nations. And nations will post their flags on their ships in their comings and goings. So when the flag is posted upright, all is well. But when the flag is usually posted inverted like it is, like we're showing here, that means that's a signal to the international community as a sign of distress. As it relates to the movement of vessels and the commerce of the different nations within the different nations.
So it's a SOS sign
Correct.
stating we need help, as if your ship is out to sea about to sink. So this inverted flag being erected for a nation of people is a sign that the nation of people are in
distress.
dire distress and in need of help.
Right.
Let's talk about this paperwork and how it relates to that support that's needed reaching out to this particular corporation.
Well,
Recorder of Deeds Office, is that correct?
Correct. What I want to show is that the Moorish Science Temple of America has been quite active as a body politic. Even though there are others that pretend to be, the official business of the Moorish Science Temple of America is to reclaim the birthright of the people, that being the land, and making sure that they can benefit from what's the legacy that's been left for us. So I kind of want to get into this verbiage of this letter that's addressed to, it's dated July 28th, 2016, and this was sent via email to Grand Sheikh El Loville and Assistant Grand Sheikhs Muad D. Love Ill, and just give people, so you can see that it's official, it's on the letterhead.
Okay, Karen A. Yarbrough being the recorder, and that date is July 28th. That's the year 2016?
That's correct.
Okay.
And just to highlight the issues, first of all, the recorder / registrar is non-responsive of any of these questions, pretty much. But I just want you to pay particular attention to the questions that are being asked. Grand Sheikh El Loville, the Office of the Cook County Recorder of Deeds is in receipt of your FOIA, which is Freedom of Information Act, by email. Information requested and responses hereto follow below. So this is the result of a FOIA. This is something that you would suspect that the real temple would do with regards to what was set up by us.
What was the purpose of this FOIA in 2016?
Well, the questions will give the audience more of an understanding of what the purpose is.
Okay.
How, and this is the first question, how and where does the Registrar of Torrens Titles get the authority to, 1, prevent the acknowledgement of the Moorish Science Temple of America as a body politic? The answer is no records responsive.
So they had nothing to say?
Well, they cited 55 ILCS section 53-5001
Statute.
as a statute as it relates to the recorder's office functions. But this interaction was listed by, this was intended to be addressed to the Registrar of Torrens Titles rather than the Recorder of Deeds. So the second question is, refuse to record documents to be filed and indexed under the trust, whether they are real estate related or not. Again, no records responsive. And then they make a reference to another statute. Number 3, refer every mortgage document, whether real estate related or not, to the fraud department. So at one point they were sending everything to the fraud department. No records responsive, right? Now here's a very important question that was posed to them, yet no answer. 4, slander the title of document 1010-5905 by being in willful ignorance of the existence of said entity as a trust. No records responsive once again. And here we go. No, they say, please be advised that document 1010-5905 reads at the top, Corporation Religious Affidavit of Organization. The document is not titled as a trust. And what I want to share with our audience is that it doesn't have to be titled as a trust to be a trust. Islam?
So you have all these questions that are being asked by a legitimate organization, the body politic, and yet the answers are no record response, and we're being referred to policies, statutes.
And this is part of the reason why it had to go into court. because this is a FOIA, which means under the Freedom of Information Act, this information was shared as their understanding of what questions were presented to them. And we are understanding that they're totally false in their assessment as it relates to the trust that was set up for us.
So they're in denial, basically.
Correct.
So what about the document that was on the 28th of July? What about the July 8th document where other questions was also asked?
Well,
Because only someone interested in the temple as a body politic would be interested enough to ask these particular questions, which is proof.
first of all, the July 8th correspondence was not a FOIA correspondence.
Okay.
And this was the official answer to the inquiry that was made to them as it relates to a trust. Because there is no way that Noble Drew Ali, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, would file documentation under the Torrance Registry system and there's no land attached to it, no way. The Torrance Registry system is a system for land registration.
So this exploitation has been going on for quite a while, and this is simply proof in black and white.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse, and there's a term that's called laches as it relates to the birthrights. If you don't protect or you don't do anything to defend your birthrights. But this goes and segues into the flag that we see here inverted and the incident that occurred with the rise of the Moors. Now, it's interesting because we are on the rise, and the rise of the Moors is imminent. But the group of brothers at that I-95 standoff, they actually were posted, and they revealed, and when we saw that they had unveiled the flag, it was inverted.
No one's talking about that. Let's touch down on that because, as you mentioned, this is literally the rise of the Moors and a call out to the international community as well. Let's talk about what no one is really talking about. And that is, here you have the media dealing with an international situation here on a domestic level. Now, the people that are actually rising up for their ancestral land, which is the Moors, who are being painted as everything but what they are. Let's talk about what the media is not talking about with this rise of the Moors situation. I'm glad that you brought that up, Grand Sheik, because I like for you to use that Palestinian situation, PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I like for you to use that because what is going on, it appears to be an unfair wage against war.
Unfair war waged against the Moors.
Unfair war, absolutely, waged against the Moors here on their own land.
Here we are here on our own land.
Indigenous people.
And what we have to do is we have to give the people a history lesson and bring them up to speed as far as to relate to both of the situations as it relates to the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Moorish Science Temple of America. Now, to compare and contrast, the Moorish Science Temple of America represents the interests of the Moors here, and the Prophet Noble Drew Ali did do things to secure our access to the land.
Well,
But the difference between the Moors and the Palestinians is that the Palestinians are full aware of who they are. And this goes back to the empirical inquisitionist aspirations to spread empire, to spread their empire in the same manner that we've seen with the Inquisitionists during the dark ages of medieval Europe.
Is this still a conquest for the land, Grand Sheik?
Well, that has never changed. This is part of the reason why the Prophet Noble Drew Ali expressed to us within our divine instructions that we are to return the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was set up for their earthly salvation. The moves that they have been making, like, okay, when they say they're doing an investigation on what was going on with these Moors, what occurs to the Constitution? The Constitution is out the window, and now you're involved in inquisitionist activities. So you're now going to utilize the institution of the church to attempt to bring validity to your position as it relates to the statutes that were produced by the state. And we're all aware and clear as it relates to the Constitution for the United States of America, that no Moors, no Moorish Americans, no Moorish American Muslims are subject to any of these states' statutes or codes.
Grand Sheik, let's properly define the threat. Imperialism, state policy, practice or an advocacy of extending power and dominion, especially by direct territorial acquisition or by gaining political and economic control of other areas, because it always involves the use of power, whether military or economic, or some subtler form. So imperialism, it appears that the state policies are being enforced on people who are indigenous to the land.
And that's unconstitutional, beloved. And so that's where they're conflating issues as it relates to the indigenous Moorish Americans, whether we're Moorish Americans, Moors, Moorish American Muslims. We all are under the designation of protection of this flag, and each and every nation is entitled to its own autonomy and sovereignty. So this is part of the tactics that have been utilized by the Inquisitionists. Now, I'm not saying all Europeans that abide by the rules of the church are bad or evil. I'm speaking towards the policies. I'm speaking towards the institution itself as how it's been moving against us. The fact that they have exhibited no integrity as it relates to our status, our true status, the truth about our status, the fact that it is impossible for a person to be Negro, black, colored, or African American, or coon, or shine, or whatever they decide to call us next week, because it distances you and it severs the link that you have to your birthright, which is the land.
Absolutely. Well, do you feel, you mentioned earlier in our meeting about an international united front being needed to address the birthright theft of the Moors, and the Palestinians have a similar situation with the land, and
We
the
have to
media.
realize,
You
beloved,
mentioned the media, how
yes.
they're being used as a tool to justify what's occurring here, to justify the inquisitionist, imperialistic aspirations, who are basically taking position as the land lords rather than ones that were given permission to come over here
By
and
the pharaohs of
trade.
Egypt.
By the pharaohs of Egypt, through
Permission,
that treaty.
the permission still stands. And the inalienable rights that's listed within the United States Constitution protects the fact that we are the people. We, the people, originally gave permission to the foreign colonists to come over here, not for them to forget, several years later, for them to forget which was conferred to them, to turn around and treasonously refer to our status as something like a Moorish sovereign citizen. So it's disingenuous for them to utilize these war tactics, because that's actually what it is. These people have went to war against us, and they've never stopped. So when we speak about the Holy Wars, the Crusades, and things of that nature, this is part of the activity and the fervorance of the Inquisitionists, and to spread their aspirations as far as it relates to the Roman Empire. So when we see them say things like, we're doing an investigation, That's inquisitionist policy. That is not the United States Constitution. And if, as further so, the prophet never said, he never gave us the instructions to subject ourselves to European inquisitionists. In fact, he instructed us to return the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was created for their earthly salvation. So we have to be able to distinguish that this is warfare on paper. This is warfare within the court system. This is warfare within the court of public opinion. They cannot explain, and there's no way they can verify and justify that any Moors are subject to the Christian codes that they've created and brought up through the states. That's the part that
yes,
they're
indeed.
conflating the issues that have been conflated as it relates to the law. So let me make this clear. The Moorish Science Temple of America has made no official statement with regards to the incident as it relates to those 11 brothers. And anyone else that has, they are not with the Moorish Science Temple of America. They are not Moors. They are fake Moors. The prophet made a reference to real Moors. Real Moors do not speak when they have not been given permission to. There's a certain protocol. The Moorish Science Temple of America as a corporate body politic is based here in Chicago, Illinois, which is known as our Moorish Mecca. And no official statement has come from the Moorish Science Temple of America until this point, presently, right now. Because none of the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America are forbidden to make any statements, radical or anything else, against any organization or organized group. So all the members, the real members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, their lips have been sealed shut in solidarity to our Moorish kindred. Islam?
Islam. Brother, define it. Thank you for that statement. It was well accepted and received, and as the Moorish Science Temple of America body politic, we are in fact in a position to make such a statement. Further defining this threat, Grand Sheik, inquisition is a prolonged and intensive questioning or investigation. Who are the inquisitionists, and what must the Moors do so that they can further understand when they're being warred, when war is occurring upon you? Because see, we have silent weapons that are being used, and we have a spiritual warfare going on. Silent weapons for a silent war,
Islam.
as you mentioned. Who is the inquisitionist?
Well, let's go back to our studies, the divine instructions from the Holy Prophet. We see that the scribes, who are the writers, the journalists, our men of letters, and the lawyers have teamed up to work this scheme against our people. The fact that we are indigenous, there is no scheme that they can work that goes beyond the fact that we are the ones that dredged the rivers, the River Nile and the Niger River, as landmarks, as proof that we are the ones that originally received permission to be in this land and no one else.
To add to that, Grand Sheik, here it states Inquisition and Ecclesiastical Tribunal established by Pope Gregory the 9th, 1232.
This is the church.
For the suppression of, absolutely, to confirm what you said, for the suppression of hearsay, actually clarified in France, northern Italy and southern France, becoming notorious for the use of torture under papal government. Now,
Papal government, which is the church,
Papal government.
which is
So it is
what
the
the
church,
prophet
in fact.
explained that would be returned back to the European nations for their own salvation. We don't need their statutes to define our salvation for us. This is what they're attempting to do when they're forcing the Moors to engage in activities like court hearings in kangaroo courts. Because if you're going to be respective of the constitutional law, then that's what needs to be addressed when you come to these issues. So if the brothers are guilty of committing a crime, then that's something that should be brought up. But there is no situation where that has been present or manifested. So if you're following and you're going according to constitutional law, then how can you be in violation of any law when that is the basis and the foundation of the permission that they receive. In other words, every time we go into court and we hear about the court, the only time that their oaths of office mean anything and matter is if they're protecting the rights of the people. Other than that, these colonists, these inquisitionists, they have no immunity. When they go against the people, the very people that gave them permission, they remove themselves from having any immunity. The problem is that it's not enough of our people that are holding them accountable because they're not mentally competent as far as it relates to what we're supposed to be doing collectively as a nation to protect the legacy that our ancestors have left to us. Islam?
Absolutely, and if we don't protect our legacy, who will? Grand, she looking at our plight from an international perspective. What is our role, the Muslims, in the greater scheme of things as a nation?
Well,
Briefly.
going back to the holy wars and jihad and all of that, our interest should be the same as every other nation, to protect its own interests and to protect this dominion, the aspects of the dominion as far as the spread of its power. This is part of the reason why we have a better understanding of why we operate on a Rotarian complexion.
Absolutely.
And this is no fairy tale as far as it relates to the extension of the Charter of the Prophet, which would also be an extension of the flag being posted at every temple. This is, we have to understand we have our own aspirations of imperialism as the present Moroccan Empire and the Moorish Empire. So there's basically literally a struggle between the two. And this is the battle. So our people need to understand what side of the battle that they're on. Islam?
Yes, indeed. I agree 100%. Well, Grand Sheikh, as we come to a close of this particular show, I'd like to thank you for all of the information that you have imparted to the audience. What we have here is a connection between two entities, and the nature of the threat goes back to sacred grounds, land that's being fought for. You have people on one hand in Palestine that are willing to strap bombs on them and run into crowds. And on the other hand, and I'm not saying that that is right, on the other hand, you have people that are being classified as sovereign citizens, terrorists, anything but who they are, indigenous to the land. And there is a man, Noble Ali, who is a prophet that was recognized by the OAS. And we have a whole nation of people who are being, they're trying to convince a whole nation of people who are indigenous to this land that they are Negroes, blacks, colors, African American, or everything but what they are. So we are right to have an inverted flag here and now because our nation is in fact in dire distress.
This is symbolic of
and
blood
it's symbolic
on the doorpost.
To blood
the
on the
red
doorpost.
represents the blood of our forefathers, and the green representing the land itself. So
everyone must stand up to the constitutional standards of who you are. And the question today is, who are you? And who are you to think that you can come into someone else's home, someone who is indigenous to the land, someone who was given permission first by the great pharaohs of Egypt? How dare you disrespect our ancestors? And blood was spilled on this land, and this is our land. So I'd like for you to join us in part 6 of Blood on the Doorpost, returning to journalistic integrity.
Islam.
Because now is the time for every nation to worship up under their own tree.
Islam. So we got